Andrea. She's okay.
We're live.
You ready? Yeah. I can call the roll. I'm gonna call the meeting to order. TSPLOST 23 Oversight Committee. Roll call. Frank Platt, Chair. Jamal Chambers. Here. Jen.
Here.
Daryl.
Here.
Andrea. Bob Bosno.
Yeah.
Alan Jones.
Yep.
Don.
Yep.
Daryl, are you here? Jeremy Field.
Present. All right, thank you. You can go ahead with the minutes and review through that.
Okay, they sent the minutes from the first, I guess that was the first meeting, last time, for your, review. And, if you've had time to read over those minutes, I'll entertain a motion to accept those.
Can I just request one correction on my, it'd be FESD.
F,
Oh, FBS, okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
you got it?
Yeah, it's on the minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's correct.
Oh, okay. I got it.
It's right on the agenda. But,
Or the, yeah, sorry.
yep, we'll make that correction.
Okay, I see it. Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Okay,
Other than that,
that motion.
Second.
It's been motion and second that, the minutes of March 20th be received as presented. All in favor, signify aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay.
All right, moving on to the first action item, is the neighborhood traffic management program policy revisions. And so, this is a slightly different, sort of request coming. It is, although it's not unusual, it's not the first time we've done it. It's just, a lot of times we're bringing a fire station, physical building. This is asking for your, agreement, consent, that the policy that's being put forth for the neighborhood traffic management is consistent with the initial project statement and then that policy. And we have Stephen Bailey and Tim Griffith with us today to talk about it. But once, if you do find that consistent and Mayor and Commission approves it, then that policy is how they'll go through the program implementing the projects with that. So using the funds from the TSPLOST, they've also got a little bit of SPLOST 2011 money left over. The SPLOST 2011 Oversight Committee disbanded some time ago, so we delegated this project to you guys to look at it. And they also have some general fund money each year, which is not a lot, but they have a little. And so with that, Stephen or Tim, I'll turn it over to you to explain the rest of you.
And so I know that y'all get some of these documents ahead of time, but would it be helpful to give any kind of just background on what NTMP is, or do y'all feel like you have a pretty good grasp of the program?
I was gonna ask if that, just a brief, I think I understand what it is, traffic calming and et cetera, in neighborhoods and, according to numbers of vehicles and so forth. Am I on the right track?
That's right. And I can share a couple slides that just kind of talk over the goal of the program. Keith, is it all right if I steal the share screen? Okay.
Please.
Okay. All right. So are you able to see the PowerPoint?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So some of this is the same thing that we explained to Mayor and Commission back in February, but really the goal with that neighborhood traffic management program is to look at individual neighborhoods to see what type of traffic calming countermeasures we can do, reducing crashes, as well as volumes and speeds of vehicles. And we have, for years, it had been an informal process where a neighborhood might call and say, hey, we've just got a lot of cut through traffic or speeding in our neighborhood. What can you do? And back in the late 90s, we formalized it into this program where neighborhoods could reach out to us, and they had to meet some specific criteria to apply or be eligible for funding. And that specific criteria had to do with the amount of vehicles per day and the speed, the relative speed of those vehicles. So you can see the latest criteria is traffic staff will go out on site and perform a traffic analysis to see if you're getting more than 300 vehicles a day, and then what's the 85th percentile. So what is the 85% of the cars driving, what is their speed, you know, and that's if it's over 30 miles an hour or there's more than 300 vehicles per day, they'd be eligible for that program. Now, what's interesting and why it's coming up now specifically is that in the past, we had, I think starting in 1999, we've had maybe 55 to 60 neighborhoods total go through the program. So maybe a few a year. This past year, after the policy was updated by mayor and commission, this past year we had 26 neighborhoods that would be eligible under the latest criteria to go through the program in 2022 or 2021 through 2022. So that tells you that if it took 20 years to get 50 or 60 neighborhoods through the program, how long it might take or what kind of implications that means to try and get 26 neighborhoods through in a single year. It's a lot of money and effort. And so that's what we ran into. And really, that's why we're trying to bring it up in front of mayor and commission in this upcoming month, is to explain, look, we've got, as Keith said, we have a little bit of money from 2011. We have the pot of money from this latest round, and it's $300,000 really only goes a small way. So let me share that list of neighborhoods that are currently going through that policy change. Let's see. I'm still sharing the PowerPoint. Hang on.
Hey, we got a list in our hand.
One in the annex.
Well, we have the list at the end of the agenda.
Do you have it? Okay. That's what I was going to show you. So it's got 12 on it. Okay. Well, so if that's what you're looking at, that's what I'm trying to find on my screen, but I can't pull it up fast enough. So if you're looking at that, does it also have the total cost estimates?
Yes. Yes. It does.
Yes. Okay. So notice, I mean, I think that was right around $940,000. Yeah, you got it pulled up now. Okay, thank you. $940,000, and we currently have $300,000 to spend. So so what that does is it triggers the need to prioritize these so that it's not just first come, first serve, but it's based on true need and, vulnerability of the neighborhoods to allocate, a limited amount of funds to a large request. So that's what this change in policy is that we're proposing is doing, is to look at how to prioritize these neighborhoods and based on a number of different criteria so that we can spend this money out the best way possible. And that's where I think when you all reviewing the changes to the policy makes a lot of sense, because this is, Keith, if you want to pull up the attachment, it's the change, the updated policy. Or yeah, this is good too. Let's talk. So what the policy does is it actually puts a weighted percentage and a weighted score on different criteria so that each neighborhood goes through the scoring process to see where they fall for funding. And so you've got volume and crash weights, which would be your 25% would be based on the volume of cars that are going through. Your crash weight would be a 10% weight. The speed of the vehicles, the average speed of the vehicles, I think is it's 40%. And then there are some scoring that has to do with economic factors and equity factors. So for the equity component that was written into this policy, we tried to look at census numbers, so percentage of minority residents and the economic indicators used from census data. Those added together add up to 25% of the score as well. So that was a direction that Mayor and Commission had when the last time they reviewed this policy, to not only look at the traffic and crash components of the neighborhood, but also is this a vulnerable neighborhood? Is this some of our most underserved communities that and that's weighted in as well. So if you scroll to the updated policy, Keith, the changes that we're proposing to the policy are pretty minor this time around. It's under section 6, under project prioritization. And we are adding a part 4 and part 5 to what used to be a 1, 2, and 3. So let me read through that prioritization, because this is where we fall right now, where we have if multiple neighborhoods are being considered and funding is limited, which is obviously where we are, staff will prioritize based on the following factors. So the original policy was written with parts 1, 2, and 3. The neighborhood with the highest measured 85th percentile speed, the highest number of vehicles, that's our volume criteria, and then whether the proposed project is in a historically underserved community. And so those are the data points that we gathered before. And what staff is proposing to add based on Mayor and Commission comments at the work session is whether or not the neighborhood has existing infrastructure and transportation infrastructure. Specifically, do they have sidewalks in their neighborhood, or don't they? And those neighborhoods without sidewalks would have a higher priority because they don't have a safe place for pedestrians to walk. So that was the new criteria that was added. And then the final one is historical crash data. So are there already a history of crashes in this neighborhood? And that's what would give an additional boost to that score. So those are the two things that we've added in this, or proposing to add in this upcoming agenda cycle.
Okay. Any questions for Steve?
Stephen, you made one comment that I think you just used the wrong word, but you said that the criteria were 300 vehicles per day or 85th percentile. That you meant to say and, didn't you?
I'm sorry, that's right. Yes, it is. I believe it's both. Is that correct, Tim?
Yeah, it's
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for catching that, Alan.
Yeah, I have a question about the way people apply for this. The way you have it has to be an owner occupier. That seems to discriminate against the very people we're trying to target here, the underserved communities, which will have a much lower, I suppose we're talking around it, which would have a much lower percentage of owner occupiers. Why does it have to be an owner occupier who initiates the process, not just a resident? Because all the residents affected by it, not just owner occupiers.
If I understood the question correctly, it was looking at that specific, the specific part of the process that says who is allowed to vote in the petition. Is that correct?
No, before that, who is allowed to initiate?
Yeah, who can submit, who can apply for it? And why is it just owner occupied versus resident?
Sure. Yeah. So that is a continuous question, and I think it's something that Mayor and Commission are going to continue to talk about. As you know, that was actually also something that was brought up during the work session, was giving access to more people to apply to this. As far as who initiates it, I think anyone can actually bring it forward to their commissioner or to staff and get the initiation started. Tim, as far as the point of contact, the neighborhood representative, does that have to be an owner occupied or can that be a renter?
We have allowed both.
Okay. So anyone can bring forward a neighborhood as, you know, for consideration, and anybody can be that point of contact in the neighborhood. What becomes the issue is who can put in a vote when it comes to getting the petition passed, right? You have to have a certain number of people, a certain percentage of the neighborhood approve this, I think at 65%. And the language in the current version of the policy, and this is not something that we just added, this is something that's been in the policy for a long time, is that it would either have to be an owner occupied resident or a renter with express permission from the owner of the property to put that vote in. And it can only be one or the other. Like, you can't have the renter and the owner of the property put in multiple votes. It has to be one person. That is something that Mayor and Commission have talked about, and we've encouraged them to continue having those conversations, because I do believe it adds some burden to renters especially, but that we did not ask to make a change as staff. That's something that would be have to be initiated by Mayor and Commission to push for that topic.
Well, if we were to recommend this, I think we should say something about that clause, because it's inequitable. It's inequitable that a renter has to get permission, go to a meeting from a landlord. That renter is just as much a resident of that neighborhood as an owner occupier is. His children are just as much at risk as an owner occupier is. It just should.
Right.
That landlord might be in Germany for all you know.
And unresponsive to requests like this. Completely agree. That's and to your point, I mean, anyone who walks the street, bikes the street, drives the street is going to be as much danger as anyone else, right? Or at much risk as anyone else. So that's the argument that has been made. The actual language from this is actually pretty outdated. It was back when funding. One of the funding options was for the neighborhood to actually have to pay for these implementations. And so the voting part of this, as you know, deciding on whether these things will be installed or not, part of that and the idea that it would be the owner occupied or owner votes is because the way that those neighbors would have to pay for that money is through a special tax allocation. And so those owner occupied, you know, the owners of the property would certainly need to be the ones voting in that case, because they're the ones paying for the implications. But that's not how the program works anymore. Program is now funded through SPLOST and TSPLOST and general funds. So I agree. I think it's somewhat outdated language that should at some point, you know, be reconsidered by Mayor and Commission.
Okay, I might share. I agree.
Totally agree. So I will say in your package, the action that you're asked to take is to confirm the concept, it's consistent with the initial project statement, or deny it, or committee defined option. You know, as we told you last time, if your votes and what your discussion points are going to be reflected in the agenda report for Mayor and Commission. You know, typical is a confirm or deny. Rarely do we have anybody deny, but that's because we try not to bring something to you that doesn't mean we haven't done our job, as I told you, if it doesn't. If you want, and sometimes groups, committees do want to add language. And so we would say, you know, that's your prerogative, whether you want to add a comment, we will reflect your comments, either the consensus of the group in the agenda report or your action that you take in form of motions can have caveats, and that would be more in the form of a committee defined.
The comments that he made, did I understand him to say that those things have already been brought up, before?
Right, Stephen? I'll let you.
Stephen?
That is correct. These have been brought up multiple times, yes.
Okay.
So I think we should reinforce that process.
Okay. Multiple times, okay. That's, okay.
So they never,
In other words, it would be the need for us to add, a comment from the Oversight Committee that it was brought up again for another month.
That's your prerogative. I don't wanna.
Yeah.
Yes or no. I mean, you can add that. I mean, it has been discussed, but you know, if that's something the group feels strongly, if there's a motion second and that's the vote to do that, we can certainly do that, but if that's the will,
Is there a motion to add a short, sentence to that pertaining to renters being able to, request these services?
well, the renters can request the services, right? They just can't be, they're currently not part of the 65% that get to vote.
Right.
right.
Or whether or not
I'm
it's
not sure
implemented.
they can, actually. I think they can go to their district representative
Right.
and request,
Right, that's,
but they can't use the mechanism through the.
I got you.
clarify that, Stephen. Can a renter come to you like, just like a property owner, or do both have to go through the procedure first?
Absolutely. Anybody can bring up the initial request. The only caveat for renters is that unless they have written permission to vote during that petition process, they won't be counted toward that 65%.
Well, let me perhaps read what it actually says. To initiate the neighborhood traffic management program procedure, a neighborhood owner occupied homeowner must contact the Transportation and Public Works Department, Traffic Secretary. A district commissioner may also submit a work request.
That's right. So that's the workaround that we found, was that the renter can go to their district commissioner and request it.
But it does seem there's still inequity in there, that the owner occupier has powers the renter does not.
Agreed.
Yeah. So I assume the motion should strike all differences between owner occupiers and renters.
That's a motion. If I get a second.
Go ahead.
Yeah, will you draft the language? Just show.
I was gonna ask you to be clear about what you're asking for a motion on. Are you
I think it's a matter of equity.
Are you saying you want
the renter to have the same,
We could just say
Right,
occupant,
occupant. Yeah, occupant.
just occupant,
Or
neighborhood
resident.
occupant or resident, yes.
There's some long-term renters around here that live there longer than.
30, 40 years.
Yeah, but, yeah, so occupants, of a residence, they have the same as, owner.
But you're stating, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, I'm just trying to make sure you do confirm that the concept, the policy is presented meets the statement, but you want added to that, the requirement
Yes.
that
Well,
owner and renter have the same.
yeah, and I mean, we could just request that the phrase "a neighborhood owner occupied homeowner" be replaced with resident.
Yeah.
And that would solve the problem.
Well, what about if, and the homeowner is a person, the resident is everybody in the family? Do we need to, it's like
Well, I mean, if
one person, their wife, their kids, they're all residents, so they all get a vote, whereas in the
this
current
is to
language.
initiate.
Which is why it has, you get to these,
Yeah.
is it a single person sort of discussion? So,
Well, this is just to initiate the
Right.
the procedure.
Or maybe
This isn't about voting or,
I thought that only
well,
person.
that's why I want to clarify, because for what I heard from Well, I was gonna say, Mr., but from Bob was that his desire was to change it everywhere, which would include the voting.
Well, I think,
Yeah, I think that, yeah, it should, obviously, it should be one vote per household.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like the person that on the lease.
I think that's a good idea.
I don't know.
So it's a homeowner
You might even think along the lines of head of household, or something,
Right.
something of that nature. You know.
The lease owner holder.
Yeah, I know, we're stuck on wording. But-
Yeah.
But I think that everybody understands the concept of what we're asking.
So instead
Probably
of suggesting specific wording, then I might suggest if what I'm hearing is that you're confirming it, but asking that the residents of the property be given the same access for initiating and voting as
A leaser.
the owner.
renters,
A leaser or a renter is the same as the owner.
Yeah.
Because like he
Rather
says,
than specific wording and let.
and nothing about getting permission from the homeowner to do it.
Right,
That
because-
seems very un-American to me, I don't know.
Well, you have, I will convey the arguments I've heard from the other side. The renter is there temporarily, or the resident may be. They could be there for 40 years, they could be there for 4 months, they could be there for another 4 days. Their lease might run out in between the time it's initiated, the time it's voted on.
The same for the homeowner.
they go to the homeowner.
That's true too, but they do have the property and the property tax. It's just, I'm not trying to argue. one side or the
But this
other.
doesn't-
I'm just,
this is no longer paid by property taxes.
that's right.
Right.
I mean,
Right,
But it
so it
doesn't
shouldn't be,
They're,
It doesn't
they're
impact it.
paying just as much towards this as the homeowner is.
Actually probably makes their property more valuable. but-
right.
because it's commerce.
That's commerce.
Yeah. That's why I'm not trying to make a discussion one way or the other. I'm just
Oh, no.
repeating what I've heard the other side say.
I think we're all in agreement, it's just a matter of how.
Language.
Worded language, yeah.
but this does say needs 65% support, but responses from owner occupied homeowners, absentee homeowners, or homeowner authorized renters will have the option to apply by mail, email, electronic
Right,
fax.
which means, and the way that it's interpreted is that in order for the renter to be the one that gets to vote towards that 65%, they have gotten permission
From the owner.
From the
from the
owner.
property owner in order for, they basically have gotten the proxy from the owner to do the vote for whether or not it gets approved.
But we want to get rid of the owner.
Cause sometimes a lot of the owners are corporations.
Yeah,
So you might not never get an answer at all.
I see. Okay.
And that's another.
That's why I agree with that, the language too.
so then the motion is, if I'm restating it to hear it correctly, Shanice, hope you're getting this, is to confirm the proposed project concept is consistent, but with the request to change to make a revision, to replace homeowners. The owner occupied with, residents or.
Some way to
At least
include renters,
Yeah.
lessees.
One who could
Lease, yeah, lease.
leasehold.
Leasehold.
Yes, owner or
Or leasehold.
leaseholder.
And go ahead, finish that statement. I'll have a comment afterwards.
Oh, go ahead. I was just gonna say that, we've got that motion, but from Bob, do we have a second for that?
I second.
Okay. All right, Stephen, I'm done.
No, so this is a great conversation, and it's the kind of conversation I really want the mayor and commission to have, and I hope they do. What I imagine will probably happen is they'll want to debate that language further and probably bring it back into subcommittee to talk about it at some point. Now, whether it's this vote, which is because they don't necessarily want to conflate it with the other part of their vote, which is, can we go ahead and spend this money on these 12 neighborhoods who have already gone through the process, right? They don't want to slow that down, but they should revisit the policy as well. I don't know how they'll do it, if they'll try and do it all at once, or if they'll approve us going forward, approve going through these 12 projects and then revise the policy for next year. But I do appreciate the comments that y'all make, and I think it will echo to heart for them as well.
I do think the substance of what you put forward with adding existing infrastructure and crash data is is great. I
Yeah.
really like that addition, and just, it seems like a no-brainer that it should be in there.
I totally agree.
That was it.
That was good.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other discussion on the motion and the second recap? Any other questions for Stephen or comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? Unanimous. All right, Stephen, can you stay on and about the Olympic, because Ronnie hasn't got here yet?
I think Ronnie's on, but yes, I will hang out.
Oh, okay. I thought he was coming in person, so that's why I knew he wasn't here in person. But Olympic Drive is a stormwater improvement. I think y'all are aware that there was a failure of that. And it's coming as a notice to you more than an action for you. We did, because y'all did talk about stormwater and infrastructure in your discussion, that it's funded in this program at length. And so we want to make sure you were fully aware of it, but the concept of it's already been confirmed by the previous TSPLOST group as far as a project in need on the public infrastructure for stormwater. But we did want to bring it and give Ronnie, if you're on, or Steve, whoever wants to just briefly, anything else you want to say about it, and then answer any questions the group may have. So there's not an action for you on it, but your opportunity to hear and ask questions.
Yeah, thank you, Keith. I'll say a couple of words here. So Keith shared with you, SPLOST office have shared with you the agenda at the time where we had it written. We were lacking some of the information. I'll give a little bit an update, including that on April 14th, we gave the contractor a notice to proceed to replace the culvert. And that notice to proceed was conditional, as we still waiting on an easement from the downstream property owner. We anticipate this easement to be completed soon. As you see here, the history item number 22 was updated with more information. If you look at the agenda item presented to Mayor and Commission tomorrow, this agenda is anticipated to be voted on as a under suspension of rule. The other part of this agenda is funding. The funding for the replacement of this project is coming from TSPLOST 2023. As you recall, the funding amount for this program approved under Project 22, $3,416,000. That 1.186289 is the unit price contract we received from the lowest bidder. We had two bids on this project. And like I said, staff has awarded this under emergency declaration by the manager, which is the typical process for those emergencies. When they happen, it gives that authority to the manager to declare emergency and move forward with available funding to replace the culvert. So that's really what we have. I'll be more than happy to elaborate more if needed or answer any questions.
But let me add to this, because as this group is getting up to speed on the process and learning, so on the funding section up here, because this is the simple one to look at, really, this is the full 3.4 is the full program value for the culvert and live stream replacement. Future tier funds is those money that comes out, as I was explaining to Dawn before some of you got here. Once the project was approved by the referendum and the voters, then Mayor and Commission decided how would that project be funded across the collection period of the program. So every year collections is labeled as a tier 1 through 5 or 1 through 7. I forget. There's some partial years in there, but so every funding within a fiscal year has a tier. And as money becomes available in that fiscal year, then we can spend it. This is showing that there's 2.1 in out years to be spent still. And then designated contingency is just money held for contingency. And so if you were doing math, it would be the revenue minus each of these two leaves what we expect the contract value to be, to show you that we've got money in other tiers, we've got money in contingency, and we have the money available to spend on this contract. So this is in general the way all of these items that come to you are gonna work. This is just a real simplified version of one.
But this doesn't really determine timing of construction, it's just money flow, correct?
Yeah, for,
Like this is a emergency
Yes.
repair, they're gonna go ahead and fix, it has how it's supposed to be.
that's
and
correct.
Fund that
This is
project as
fund,
the money comes in.
well, no, this is saying we're gonna fund it now. This is, when Mayor and Commission approves this, it's going to be funded, and they've already been given what's called a notice to proceed. The contractor's been given direction to go ahead and start.
So that 2.1 million from future tier funds,
That,
those projects, they're gonna be projects that were in this tier that are not gonna be done now because,
no, that's just that we've got that money that's left still to be spent in future years on other projects that aren't, maybe not ready yet to be spent on, that hasn't come to you yet.
okay,
It says it's in the expense category, but it's really just sort of a budget line item. This is being
Okay.
left for future projects that'll come through you as part of normal project concept stuff. Yeah, no, it's not extra money. It's part of 3.4 million that was originally approved for this overall program. It's just the specific sub-project for it yet has not been determined. Oh. Yes, there may be others that come up fairly quickly that it gets spent on. It might be, I don't know what they are, it'll be some other culvert.
So if, to help answer that question more, in the package for today on page 48, it's attachment 2, it's the live stream culvert system evaluation and replacement report. It lists 45 locations of culverts that have reached the end of their useful life. Some of these currently, I think we have 6 of them going through rehabilitation, so the list should shrink a little bit than 45, but we still have over 30 locations that need replacement, and our deficit is in the 20 million range. So 2 million is barely scratching the surface of what we need. The other stormwater utility fund has funded the replacement of those culverts in the past, some of those culverts, but very little portion of those. Main work is completed by our streets and drainage staff for partial of the cost, which is materials and some rental. So with that, that's just additional information for you to know what's the deficit look like. And we would love to replace as many as we can as we receive funding. So this is just scratching the surface. And fortunately, if you recall, we had 3 major culvert failures on January 4th. We had a heavy rainfall event that caused 3 culverts within a radius of a mile that failed. Olympic Drive, Voiles Road, and Charlie Bolton. Charlie Bolton was awarded a couple months ago, and it's under construction for replacement. Voiles Road was completed, and now we have Olympic Drive. In the agenda, we also list all the projects that they were completed since 2018, I believe. Looking at the fact and issue with the table on that one. What page is that?
The one on the screen.
Yeah.
All right, that's facts and issue number 8. We count about 33 locations that we have repaired with mainly in-house staff as part of the live stream pipe replacement. Just to give you an idea of how many culverts we replaced, how many we have on the list to do, so that $2.19 million will sure go towards this live stream pipe replacement list approved by Mayor and Commission at a concept level project.
Let me ask questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
So in the other list, the previous list, Olympic Drive was estimated in August 2022. at 980 and 750. Presumably that is, if it hadn't failed. But having failed, how much is it extra is it gonna cost?
These conceptual costs are very preliminary. These are back of a napkin type of cost. We did not develop these costs based on quantities, actual quantities. It was more of a number that we can kind of estimate. Sometimes we are faced with much more in-depth engineering needed and construction. Sometimes the culvert to replace the existing is much larger. Sometimes we have to navigate certain utilities in the area. So those costs, again, these are conceptual cost and what we call back of a napkin cost estimates.
I was trying to get at, what's the extra cost of having to replace a collapsed one over having to renovate an existing one?
Oh, usually it should not be much. Especially when we have two bids. If we've received one bid, I would be concerned. We received two bids and they were very close in numbers. The difference should not be high. Like it should not be more than 10%, in my opinion. But there's no way of gauging it at this point.
And this is not quantifiable, but I would say one of the answers to your question is contractors know that they've got you in a corner when you're looking, you go out to an emergency bid versus going out to a regular bid. They know that they can put higher unit costs and to mobilize quicker on a contract that's an emergency contract, they were going to push for a higher dollar amount. So there's certainly, at a qualitative level, that's absolutely something to think about.
One difference, Ronnie, you correct me, but one difference might be that a replacing a failure, there could be extra washout that might have occurred that you wouldn't have needed if you had replaced it ahead of time, perhaps. Maybe there's some road washout or right of way on the ditches approaching or the side slopes, but that would really be the main difference because your material backfill, excavation, all that's gonna be.
Definitely, you have a lot more excavation to do. And also you're working with utilities that are under threat of failure versus if you plan it, it would be much safer. So there's higher liability on the contractor when they sign up for work like this.
So we don't need a motion for this. This is
No,
just
this was for
informational.
But give you a chance to ask questions if you. The other projects that are on this list, if it's in the agenda, though, these are ones that will be done sometime in the future. So this is their current list of knowing what they know they need to do.
A long list.
Yeah, well, this one's got to be done. So
Yeah, if it's not, then you end up with what you had in this last rain. Ultimately, for others, you're gonna have failure.
That was a pretty big storm on that.
It was.
I measured 4 inches. Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Any other questions for them on that?
No.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Oh, you got, wait a minute.
No, it's,
You got a question?
well, I was just gonna say, is the replacement of this culvert, is it replacing what is there with the exact same thing, or is it designing for, a 500-year storm now, not a 100-year storm, or whatever it's designed for?
Sure. We are increasing the cross-sectional area, so we are carrying a little bit more through this culvert, and we are meeting current standard with the sizing. So the typical standard is that 25-year storm would be carried through the culvert, and a 100-year storm would not overtop the roadway. That's the design that we have currently. So the 500-year storm, that's not a standard we designed for. They've used the word biblical rain events, and that's what that 500. It's really not a practical number to design culverts in these locations nowadays. We follow typical standards, so it is following current standards.
And just the sheer, even if you only were replacing with what's there, the fact that it's new, it's not silted in, it's not partially collapsed, it doesn't have holes in it. it's going to perform better than the one that failed.
Yes,
Oh,
and I should
yeah.
say, oh, I'm sorry, I interrupt somebody there, but I should also add, we are replacing a corrugated metal pipe with reinforced concrete. Corrugated metal has history of lasting between 40 to 60 years max. Concrete has that life expectancy of 100 years, and they are lasting more than that.
All right.
Jen, you have one thing you were trying to say?
No, I mean, my point was, yes, just because it's new, it is gonna be more efficient and it's gonna transport water better. But if we're designing for something that is no longer reality, then we're gonna find ourselves in the same situation that we are
Right.
right now.
But there is continued construction, that's in the Athena Business Park area.
Yep.
And there's gonna be a new factory put up, I gather, on Spring Valley in the next 2 years. That's all
Okay.
gonna increase the runoff.
Right. That wouldn't get probably to this particular pipe, but not this one.
The Christian Lake, doesn't that?
I don't think it would get to this, but think I'm wrong. Okay, I could be. I won't argue with you. You know your neighborhood's better than I do. I would not argue. All right, thank you, guys.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
At 6 o'clock, so I will try to go through the other reports real quickly. Mostly it's if you have questions. Airport runway package for the taxiways is getting rebid. That's the first project. The greenways, and these are TSPLOST 2018 projects. We don't have a report yet going for the 23.
23, right.
Feel like this, so. We've got a new section of greenway that is, the contract been given notice to proceed and construction starting that I'll take. If you're familiar with the greenway where it goes out past the cemetery towards, College Station, this will take it on up to, Steerage Lane and to, Barnett Shoals. So, it'll be a nice addition there. That's getting underway, should be finished by the end of the year. The Firefly Trail, the bridge over Trail Creek there at Dudley Park, dedication is this Thursday at 4 o'clock. If y'all would like to attend, we'd love to have you. It's open, of course, to the public, and there's some giveaways for the first few 100 people there. So if you want to get there, get one of those, get there early. But that's moving along. There also, I think the paving contract was approved last. I believe that was 2 weeks ago. So that work for this calendar year is getting underway. The Tallahassee Bridge is coming along. That's scheduled for opening at the end of the year. I think that's really the bulk of everything else is in design still at this point for that program. I don't have a financial yet for your program, but and for expenditure status, but that'll be coming in. That concludes my program. And give you the public information of the dedication on Thursday. But yeah, other business, you all are welcome to talk about last year. If you want to wait till another meeting, that's up to you. Chair.
What's the pleasure? Yeah, wait till the next meeting to discuss with the vice chair. Okay, we'll wait till.
Okay.
Next.
Perhaps we'll have a District 2 member appointed by then. I don't know.
Okay.
District, Melissa Link was reelected or was elected to District 2 for the rest of that term. So I'm sure she'll be getting with the mayor, and hopefully by the May mayor commission meeting. He usually makes those announcements of appointments at a voting meeting, which the next one will be the first Tuesday in May. Don't know that that's when this one will occur, but that would be probably the next time that he would.
Okay.
Okay. All right. And next meeting date is May 15th.
Well, you won't be here.
Yeah.
The only change I would ask is that the gate open a little bit earlier than it did today.
Yeah.
It is open now.
Me and you behind each other standing there
Yeah,
waiting.
well, she said it was just a slight oversight. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's okay. It was okay. We still got in here on time.
We was there ahead of time, so we were running though.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Next time, circle the block one more time.
I should have had you.
Okay. All right, you want me to shut them down?
So, that's all I had.
If there's nothing else, we call this meeting adjourned. Until next.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let us down, Shadisi.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank y'all.
Well, you've been doing all right.
Chief, I've been doing well, sir.
What are you doing to the fire,
Are you busy?
trail?